Ngayong gabi sa Reaksyon, ang pagdaong ng dalawang barkong pandigma ng Russia dito sa Pilipinas noong nakaraang buwan ay indikasyon daw ng gumagandang relasyon ng Pilipinas at Russia ayon kay Presidential Spokesperson Ernesto Abella. Kaugnayan ng pinapalawig na ugnayang militar ng dalawang bansa. Bukod sa posibilidad ng military training exercises, nag-alok din ng Russia ng mga gamit at sasakyang pang-militar tulad na lang ng mga submarine at dekalidad ng mga baril. Suportado rin nila si Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte sa kanyang kampanya kontra droga na karaniwang binapatikos ng international community. Ang ugnayan ng Pilipinas at Russia, pag-uusapan natin kasama si Russian Ambassador to the Philippines, Igor Khovaev. Good evening, Ambassador Khovaev. Welcome to Reaksyon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure for me.
You know, Mr. Ambassador, Russia is an enigma to most Filipinos. I don't think that, I can find any Filipino among my circle of acquaintances who knows a whole lot about Philippine-Russia relations. But this is changing because of the way President Duterte has been showing his, let's just say, political affection for Russia these past couple of months. What can you say about this relationship coming into the Philippines 2 years ago as ambassador? Have you felt that change with the change in administration?
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, believe me, please, the affection is mutual. It's very important because affection, like respect, must be mutual. If it's not, there will be no respect at all.
I agree.
As for enigma, I'm afraid I would add. I'm afraid that this enigma has a Hollywood-style flavor.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that the perception of many Filipinos regarding Russia, so
is it wrong?
To a considerable extent, is based on Hollywood movies.
Oh,
it's wrong, absolutely wrong. It has nothing to do with real Russia.
All right.
Believe me, please. And there is only one recipe to improve this situation.
And what is that?
We need to intensify people-to-people contacts.
That's right.
And it's time. It's time for Filipinos to discover Russia, and it's time for Russians to discover the Philippines. Because unfortunately, I have to say that most of Russians, they don't know a lot about your country. It's a pity.
Yeah, and I think it's a mutual
Yes, definitely.
feeling.
It must be a two-way street. So the Philippines is also a kind of enigma for most of Russians. It's a pity. I am deeply convinced that our two nations deserve to know each other much, much better. And I, myself, as ambassador, of course, will do our best to improve this regrettable situation.
I will have to agree with you that much of our perception of Russia has been quite based on Hollywood movies. And especially now that President Duterte has expressed a preference, let's just say, over Russia, especially because of his objections to the criticisms arising from Washington, D.C. How do you intend to dismantle this perception in ordinary Filipinos' minds that Russia is basically an enemy of the United States, and anyone who is an enemy of the United States is a friend of Russia?
Believe me, please, the definition enemy doesn't exist in our political language. No Russian leader has ever used the definition enemy. And President Putin calls the United States and other NATO member states as partners.
Partners.
Not enemies. So enemy, it's from the language of some other partners.
There has been a perception
it's not for us.
That there seems to be a pitting of alliances. It's almost like now that we're gearing ourselves more toward Russia, it seems to equate with a moving farther away from the United States. Is that a fair assumption?
I don't think so. I don't think that it's a fair, adequate understanding what's happening now. In my assessment, so I see an objective need for your country to diversify your foreign policy, to enlarge the circle of your partners and friends. So that's why we are talking about diversification, which means getting new partners, new friends, and preserving their traditional partners.
Agree. Unfortunately, it's
So
been
I don't
largely
see- I
about
don't see-
military
yes,
support.
I don't see any contradiction in this respect. And Russia fully respects your national interests. We fully respect your ties, close relationship with your traditional partners and allies.
That's right.
Because that's the choice of Filipinos.
Yes,
That's your legitimate right as any sovereign state. But at the same time, we expect your traditional partners to refrain from putting obstacles on the way of developing the relationship between the Philippines and Russia.
Have you felt any of that?
Simply because we have some feeling. I would prefer to refrain from going into details. But I believe that everyone understands me correctly. Definitely. So, as I have already said, we need to intensify people-to-people contacts. The best way to achieve this aim is to identify specific areas where our two countries
That was my next question.
Can and should closely cooperate with no damage to your relationship with your traditional partners.
Okay, so which particular areas of diversification, when you're talking about diversification, which particular areas of partnership should we develop further?
We are open to discuss any option of our bilateral cooperation. To a considerable extent, it depends on you. What do you expect from Russia? So, in our perception, in our assessment, so we are interested in promoting, substantially enhancing our trade and economic cooperation.
That's right. Yes.
We are ready to open our market is open for example, agricultural producers of your country.
Okay, yeah, because by and large, I know from research that the only real ongoing trade relationship we have has to do with your supplying us with petroleum. And trade has been at a measly $500 million, over the last couple of years. If we're going to get into agriculture, what, in layman's terms, Mr. Ambassador, what would the Russian market like to try out in terms of our agricultural products if we were to export stuff to Russia?
There is a great demand for tropical agricultural products in Russia. Russia is a big market, and as far as I understand, your country needs new markets for your products.
That's right.
So we are ready to cooperate with you. And believe me, please, Russia is not a petro state, as portrayed by some Western mass media. By the way, it's not quite easy to produce oil and gas in Russia, because we have to do it under severe, harsh climate conditions in Siberia, in the Arctic area. So it requires the use of very sophisticated, most advanced technologies.
So educate me,
and we are ready to export, to supply not only oil and gas, but oil and gas products. We are ready to closely cooperate with you in the energy field as a whole, including the use of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Russia is a great energy superpower. And we are also open to cooperate with you in the space industry, for example.
Space industry?
Yes, definitely. Russia is also a space superpower. But unfortunately, most of Filipinos don't know that.
Right.
But just one example. Even American spaceships, space rockets, they use Russian engines. Only Russia is able to produce such engines.
Aside from trade, Mr. Ambassador, where do you think we can find commonalities in terms of enriching our relationship? Culturally, perhaps, is there something there that we should tap, aside from military relations, which are already in the pipeline as we speak?
Yes, of course, we need to intensify cultural context, cultural exchanges. And not only culture, all other humanitarian fields, including education.
Is that a challenging demand for somebody like you? Given the lack of a relationship there, as it were, in the past 40 years since you set up your embassy here?
I believe that sometimes history needs a push. But any push can be made by specific people.
It doesn't have to come from you.
Nothing can be done automatically. Some personal efforts are required. So that's why I'm deeply convinced that, as I have already said, our two countries need and deserve to know each other much, much better. And there must be some people who will help our two nations to do that. That's why we need to identify specific areas where objectively we need each other, like energy sector, education, culture, transportation, for example,
yes.
modernization of your
Infrastructure.
transport infrastructure in the Philippines. So railway systems, for example, seaports, airports, and so on and so on. Telecommunication, that's another promising sector. We have sophisticated technologies, and we are ready to share our technologies. You have just mentioned military ties. Of course, we are ready to help your country improve your defense capabilities.
Especially in terms of naval capabilities.
Yes, definitely.
Knowing that we are an archipelago.
So we are ready to supply sophisticated arms and weapons. We are ready to assist you in staff training. We are ready to transfer technologies to help you create your own defense industry. Why? Because we are interested to developing long-term cooperation. That's our strategic interest. It's not a short-term policy. That's a strategic line. And believe me, please, we Russians, we have no hidden agenda. If we want this or that, so we say it frankly, openly.
But you have said that you will not support a military alliance between the Philippines and Russia. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, right. We don't seek military alliance
Why not?
with any country.
Okay. Why is that?
That's our fundamental line. Why? Because we believe that closed military alliance is it's a legacy of the Cold War. So all of us now have to face with common threats and challenges to our security, like terrorism, extremism, illegal trafficking, piracy, and so on. So military alliances, they are not able to respond adequately to these threats. So what we need in the Asian-Pacific region is equal security for all members of the regional community. The closed alliances can provide security only for their members, not for the countries which are outside these unions. That's why we don't support in principle the idea of military alliances. But at the same time, we are ready to discuss any other option of our cooperation on equal footing and with no political linkage.
Abangan ang ikalawang bahagi ng aking panayam kay Russian Ambassador to the Philippines, Igor Khovaev, tungkol sa ugnayang Pilipinas at Russia. Kung walang magsasabi, walang mangyayari, ang opinyon mo pinakikinggan, pinag-uusapan dahil ang bawat balita may katumbas na reaksyon. Ako po si Lucy Cruz Valdez. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.